Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. With this slump that I'm on, the slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm going to burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump just continues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you. Better Off Dead, College Football Week 10 edition. Things are not going well, obviously, as we're 1-2 in college football, ready to start the week. I don't like the board tomorrow very much at all. I'm going to give out 3 plays, and one of them is going to be a total because I just don't even give a shit anymore. Today was the losing day, which feels really bad because this is the worst day that we've had in, I don't know, well over a month at this point. I'll talk about it more tomorrow morning, I guess, because the morning show will have less to talk about than we have here because I got to fucking cover the entire college football board here. I also look like a fat baby because I had to fucking shave my face to be a woman for Halloween. If you guys didn't see that, I was the Phillies Karen. I tweeted it out. You can go check that out at Learn to Toad. Let's just get fucking into it, man. I don't fucking care. College football. We got some games to talk about. I mean, dude, Boston College, I get thrown off by this all the time, dude, because I'm logged into ESPN. They're one of my favorite teams listed, so they're always at the top of the score board here, even though they're not playing the earliest game. We'll talk about that anyway. Number 12, Notre Dame is playing against 1-7 Boston College. Oh, my God. This is a rivalry game, though, so BC might actually, if they're going to show up for a game, it's going to be a game like this, man. BC has basically nothing left to play for this year. This is going to be one of the games where maybe they'll show up for it. They get a ranked Notre Dame team coming into their house. It's a rivalry. Annual rivalry between these 2 Catholic schools. I forget what the name of the rivalry is. I don't even remember, whatever the fuck it is. I lose track of everything, man. This game, I don't know what should we even say about this. Notre Dame's a huge favorite, obviously. They're up from 28 to 30.5. 86% of the tickets, 95% of the cash on Notre Dame. So the money looks like it's coming in on Notre Dame. Numbers headed to 31. I mean, I would not lay that with Notre Dame, though. Notre Dame has bigger things ahead of them. Like, they do not need style points here. I mean, they're a 2-loss team, so yeah, I mean, they just got to try to make the college football playoff here, and I don't really think style points against BC is really going to matter. They just got to make sure to win this game, get out of there. They're coming off a big rivalry win in their previous game against USC. That was a much bigger game against a ranked USC team. That was the biggest remaining game on Notre Dame's schedule. They also went into a bye after that, so they went into a bye on a good note. So I will reiterate that when a team goes into the bye on a good note, they can't really use that bye to fix anything because everything's working. So it's like, what do? You're going to use that bye to prepare for Boston College? Probably not. And probably actually, they might even just start looking ahead and be preparing for Navy, who they have up next, because Navy is actually an undefeated team. So with their remaining schedule here, that's really the only threat really to Notre Dame going undefeated for the rest of the season. I would say I don't think they're going to lose any of these remaining games. I wouldn't imagine. Although Stanford, I mean, have to go to the Pacific Coast, maybe, because that'll be the first time they go to the Pacific Coast. That's a rivalry game, but Stanford sucks. I mean, Notre Dame's obviously going to be a big favorite in every one of these remaining games, but Navy's the biggest game remaining. If I was going to play this game, I would take the points with Boston College, though. Again, I think Notre Dame, it's going to be a game where they probably just try to get in and get out, don't get anybody hurt. They might start putting backups in, whatever. Like, again, they don't need to cover the spread here. So those are my thoughts on that. That's on ESPN. Isn't that just great? At 3:30 p.m. Eastern. 12 p.m. slate, though. We have Penn State, Ohio State on Fox, and the schedule makers, when they first scheduled this, they were thinking this was going to be a huge game, and instead Penn State doesn't even have a win in the Big Ten. They're basically dead. They fired their coach. But if Penn State's going to get up for a game, man, Penn State, they're not going anywhere. Just like I said with BC, teams like this, when they, have not achieved their goals, their dreams have been crushed, whatever. Like, I know Penn State could technically still become bowl eligible or whatever, because I think they have a shot at that because they could get 6 wins here. But this is going to be one of the games that matters on the remaining schedule. Like, they get to play Ohio State. I mean, that's a game that they will get up for when they really have nothing left to play for the rest of the season. Ohio State, obviously, ranked number 1 in the country. They are actually the best team in the country, power ratings-wise, if you look at pretty much any respected power ratings. But is Ohio State going to maybe take Penn State lightly now because Penn State's been so bad this season? They might. Ohio State, I mean, they really have not been tested yet. Like, their best win was against Texas in week 1, and that was a close game. And then since then, like, who have they really played? I mean, I'm not going to say Ohio State's not still the best team. I mean, the power ratings are saying they are, but they've faced a pretty weak schedule. Their best win besides that is probably actually the road game against Washington is their best win besides that. Like, Illinois, I know they were ranked at the time, but Illinois is not very good. So those are my thoughts on this. Ohio State's also coming out of a bye. They went into a bye as an undefeated team, and again, I'll say that that's not really a good time to have a bye because it can just disrupt your momentum. I mean, you don't want to have a bye when everything's working. Sure, they'll get up. They'll probably still get up for this, I guess, because it's Penn State and they don't really have any bigger games after this until they play Michigan in the final week of the season. So maybe the game will still matter to Ohio State a little bit, but they could have their momentum disrupted a little bit. Penn State might actually be able to take them a little bit by surprise here. I think Penn State, like, talent-wise, they're still a little bit better than what their record looks. I know they lost their quarterback, Aller. I don't really think that's really even that bad of a thing. So, I mean, he's not that good. So I don't know if that really downgrades Penn State that much, to be honest. And Penn State, they've at least been competitive in their last, like, all their losses have been close losses, I should say, at the very least. So you can at least say that about them. They went into a bye as well, by the way. So the schedule makers were expecting this to be one of those big games. Hey, let's give both these teams byes coming into this game. Penn State went into the bye on a much more advantageous at a much more advantageous time, I should say. They went into the bye on a bad note, losing 4 games in a row. They did cover against Iowa because that was Penn State's fired coach spot. They had fired James Franklin. It was also the injured player theory spot, so they had a couple of things going for them. They covered the number against Iowa, still didn't win, but now they get to go into a bye, and I think that bye is extra helpful for Penn State because it means they get to get more reps with their backup quarterback here, who's going to be their starting quarterback now. He gets to get more reps with the starting offense, gets to learn the system more. They get that week to try to fix some things. They get an extra week with the interim coach there to figure more things out. So I think that bye came at one of the best possible times for Penn State. So I would take the points with Penn State in this game if I was going to play it. I won't, but it's also a very low total at 44.5. So if you're taking points, you're getting a ton of points here. And you're taking those points with a very low total as well. So that's a better time to take a huge amount of points like this is when you're getting a low total. 69% of the tickets and 79% of the cash on Ohio State. But the line did drop from 20.5 down to 18.5. I don't know if it was ever at 21, so I don't think you're really missing out on a key number here. I think 18.5 or anything in that range or anything above that, that seems fine to me. I would take the points with Penn State if I was going to play that one. It could actually be a fairly ugly, low-scoring game, man. Also at 12, we have a pretty big game on ABC. Number 9, Vandy at number 20, Texas. And again, I feel like I say this every week. I don't know which game is going to be the college game day game. I don't know if maybe it's even going to be Georgia and Florida because that's always just such a big rivalry. I don't know if they get the game day slate. I don't know. It's probably not going to be Vandy and Texas, though. But they're on ABC, which is part of the ESPN family. Number 9, Vandy, 1-loss team against number 20, Texas, who's a 2-loss team, although both teams 3-1 in the SEC. This is interesting because you have Vandy, who's ranked 9th in the country. Texas ranked 20th, even though they were ranked number 1 to start the season. And yet Texas is a 3-point favorite here, and they're headed towards 3.5. So it's like, well, what gives? This is another one of those games where the team that's ranked lower is being favored by the odds makers. The odds makers are telling you Texas is probably basically the slightly better team. I don't know how much you give Texas for home field here. Maybe you give them about 3.5. But so even if that's the case, they're telling you that these teams are even. So the odds makers are telling you something different from the rankings makers. Whenever I see a spot like that, as I keep saying, the odds makers, they have the money at stake, man. So the odds makers, they do this as a business. So you got to put more stock into what the odds makers are telling you than what the rankings makers are telling you, because the rankings makers are just dipshit, like beat writers that just go based on feel and what they've seen, basically. Is Vandy really the 9th best team in the country? Absolutely not. I'm not even convinced that they're a top 25 team, to be honest. Texas is. Texas, say what you will about their offense, which is shit. And Arch Manning, by the way, there were some question marks about whether he was going to start here because I think he's either injured or maybe he just hasn't been getting the job done. But it seems like he is going to play. So that, I think, is no longer going to be a question mark. It will be Manning. But Texas, I mean, you know what they do. They play really good defense. They have the better defense here. I know this is a spot where the defense is laying points rather than taking points. I'd rather take points with the better defense. But you look at what Vandy has done so far, and I don't know, man. I mean, that South Carolina win looks a lot less good now than it did back then. I mean, I told you South Carolina was not actually that good. They were pretty poor at the beginning of the season. I actually gave out Vandy as a play in that game, telling you that South Carolina was just thriving on like defensive and special teams touchdowns. So now the early slate that Vandy played looks very, very weak. They beat FCS, Charleston Southern, Virginia Tech, who wound up firing their coach, South Carolina, who's not that good, and fired their offensive line coach, Georgia State, terrible team, Utah State, who's not very good either. And that was those were their out-of-conference games, plus their one SEC game against South Carolina. Very weak early season schedule. Then they lost to Alabama. I mean, obviously, you're not going to really knock them from doing that. I mean, Alabama, probably the second best team in the country. They were able to get that just statement win against LSU. I mean, Vandy, a program that doesn't usually beat LSU, but LSU, I mean, they just fired their coach. So how good is that win, really? LSU struggling a little bit. And then Vandy beat Missouri last time out, and that was a game, it went into overtime, I think, right? And I think I gave out, or no, it didn't go into overtime, but I gave out Missouri as a play in this game, and it was close, and I think Missouri's quarterback got hurt in the game, and I think Vandy actually intentionally injured him. I think I was complaining about that. So Vandy, really, they're not as good as the record looks, man. Texas has actually faced a more difficult schedule. I mean, Texas, well, they've at least faced Ohio State and Oklahoma. I mean, those are two really good teams at the very least. And Florida was their one of their losses. That was on the road, Florida. I mean, Florida stepped up their game for that game at least. I think Texas was looking ahead to the Oklahoma game, the Red River rivalry. So, yeah, I mean, I do actually think Texas has faced a little bit more of a difficult schedule here. So, as you can tell, I'm going to lean to Texas in this game. I think the spot sets up better for them as well because Texas is coming off back-to-back scares on the road as a big favorite against Kentucky and against Mississippi State. And Texas did poorly in both of those games. And I think Arch Manning might have gotten hurt in that Mississippi State game. And whoever their backup quarterback was actually came in and helped them win the game in overtime, if I remember correctly. I think it was overtime, right? Yeah. And normally I don't want to really look to a team that went into overtime, but in that case, when you're a big favorite like that and you play poorly, I think you're going to refocus after that. I think maybe Texas was even looking ahead to this. Yes, this is going to be a revenge game for Vandy, but when is Vandy against Texas not a revenge spot for Vandy, right? Like, Texas always beats Vandy. And the thing is, Vandy almost beat Texas last year in Vandy. So I think Texas is going to remember that. So maybe Texas will actually show up for this game for all of those reasons that I just stated. So I like Texas for that reason in this game as well. This is actually fairly close to being a play for me, to be honest. And Vandy, they're coming off a couple of ranked wins again, so they're having to face a fourth-ranked team in a row, which makes it really, I don't know, not the easiest spot for them. They got to go on the road to do this. And if this was the beginning of the season, which I know it isn't, we've seen more, we figured out more about these teams since then. But at the beginning of the season, Texas would have been a massive favorite in this game, and now they're only a 3-point favorite. Odds makers are telling you these teams are about even. I don't buy that. Just Texas's defense alone being one of the top, few defenses in college football, that alone basically would tell me that Texas should be more of a favorite here. You're going to be able to get them 3.5. I mean, obviously the 3 is better, but 58% of tickets are on Vandy. The public kind of leaning towards Vandy here. 57% of the cash on Texas. Again, the market is agreeing with it as well. I like Texas in this one. Mr. Pinsey, what's up, man? Thanks for coming back. Thanks for hanging out again. I apologize for the bad day today. I mean, not every day is going to be a winner, so hopefully we get back on track here. I mean, I was running so hot that you're going to have bad days, more than I've been having. It's a grind. You got to win 54% or so to profit and to beat this. And I've just been so hot recently that you knew there was going to be some sort of a decline. So 1-3 tonight, obviously not what I wanted. And I think I'll talk about it tomorrow morning. If you come back, I'm going to talk about it for, tomorrow morning. I do think that the basketball losses were both bullshit. I got the football game completely wrong. I should not have given that out as a play, but I don't think I was wrong really about the NBA games. Yeah, bad days happen. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some luck involved. But you hope that the skill can just overcome the luck a little bit. Miami, number 10 in the country at SMU on ESPN at noon. And by the way, I should just throw out there that we're getting it to the point in the season where they're going to be teams that have just become bowl eligible and stuff. And sometimes you want to look to fade teams that didn't have high aspirations sometimes, and they didn't even expect to make a bowl at all, and they become bowl eligible. Sometimes you want to fade those teams, but I don't really see too many of those situations yet. And then once you get into the really late weeks, then you do want to take into account, is this team still trying to make a bowl? Is this team already bowl eligible? Do they just not have anything left to play for, etc.? It's not going to come up in any of these big conference games, really, at this point, though. But yeah, Miami at SMU. Looking at this game, Miami 6-1, obviously, but they bounced back nicely from their one loss to Louisville, which was a win for me on the show with Louisville in that one. Plus the points and on the money line. Sprinkle a little bit on the money line whenever you take the underdog, man. Miami, I was correct, I believe, last week. I think they covered that number, right? I think they were about a 30-point favorite. They blew out Stanford, a nice bounce back for Miami. But now this is only their second road game of the entire season, man. And this is their first time leaving the state of Florida. It's a very, very weird scenario. It's week 10, and this is only their second road game and first time leaving Florida because their only other road game was at Florida State. Kind of a weird spot, man. SMU, on the other hand, they're coming off an ugly loss last time out to Wake Forest, and I gave out Wake Forest as a play last week on the show. We didn't have a great week last week in college football either, but that was a win. SMU, I thought they were in a terrible spot. They were coming off their big revenge win over Clemson for the ACC championship game last year, and they had this Miami game on the horizon. They just had a terrible game against Wake Forest, only scored 12 points. Just an awful game. But you can kind of explain it because of the spot. So I think this sets up much, much better to look towards SMU in this one. SMU is still looking to become bowl eligible. They probably will. I mean, I don't really think they're going to lose to Boston College next week, even though it's going to be on the road. But coming off the Miami game, I mean, you never really know. They might be in a little bit of a hangover spot or letdown spot or whatever. Miami's only laying 10 points in this one, so they're not really laying a huge amount for the number 10 team in the country. It makes it look almost a little bit too easy to lay the points, which the public is doing. 60% of the tickets, only 57% of the cash on Miami. As I talk about this more, I mean, just because Miami hasn't left the state of Florida, I mean, that sets up a kind of interesting spot to look towards SMU. I still won't give it out as a play, but I do kind of like that one too. SMU plus the points would be the way I would lean in that game. All right. Fox Sports 1 also at noon. Am I going to talk about all the ranked? I mean, I guess I will. There aren't really that many ranked games this week. As tradition, I talk about all of them. It seems like there are fewer games this week to talk about. So finally, we probably won't have a 2-hour show here. We do have number 22, one-loss Houston on Fox Sports 1, also at noon, facing West Virginia, who has not won a game yet in conference. Obviously, Houston's the better team here, but Houston, they're much more of a defensive team. This is a game with a low total, so right away I kind of look at games with low totals like this, and I want to start looking towards taking the points. Houston's coming off a fairly big win over Arizona State. They pulled off that nice ranked win over Arizona State, and Houston became ranked, I think, because of that win. So sometimes when that happens, when you see a team that's been unranked all season, and they're probably not actually a top 25 team power rating-wise, which I would say is the case with Houston. They're not one of the actual 25 best teams in the country, and they become ranked for the first time. Sometimes that puts a target on their back a little bit, and sometimes they get a little bit plump and gay, as we say on the show here. They get a little bit too cocky, too overconfident. They got a primetime game against UCF coming up next, too. And I know UCF's not exactly an opponent you're going to be looking ahead to, but because that's a primetime game, maybe they will look ahead a little bit to that because it's a Friday night game coming up next week. So I don't think the spot is good for Houston. Arizona State lost Leavitt again in that game last week, I believe, as well. And Arizona State was coming off that big upset of Texas Tech. So they were pretty much in a letdown spot against Houston, too. So there were some reasons why Houston was able to pull off that upset last week. So I would take the points with West Virginia in this one, man. A lot of these are games where I definitely have an opinion, but I'm not going to give them out as plays. I'm trying to leave my plays to just like the strongest opinions that I have, and hopefully we get it done, but we'll see. A lot of times I see, I leave I'm feeling like I'm leaving money on the table, basically, or whatever. Like, not giving out plays on a lot of these, leans that I have, and, a lot of them come through. But that's the name of the game, man. Unfortunately, with this one, you missed out on the 14.5 if you wanted that on West Virginia. The number's down to 13. I don't think you're going to get the 14.5. But you could wait and see if it gets back up to 14. You could wait until noon tomorrow. Because, if it drops slightly from 13, whatever. Even though 13 is slightly key, it's certainly not anywhere near as key as 14. 82% of the tickets, 53% of the cash on Houston. So Houston is a very public team, and they're taking less of the actual money. The money's almost evenly split. So that tells you the bigger bets are taking the points with West Virginia here. Total's low, like I said, at 49, and the money looks like it's coming in on the under as well. Again, Houston, they're not a very good offense. They're much more of a defensive team, so that might help allow West Virginia to hang around. You don't really typically want to lay points with a defensive team in a game with a low total like that. You want to tend to look towards the underdog. West Virginia, I think the reason for still showing up is that they're facing a ranked team here, and they're still looking. They don't want to go winless in conference, man, so I think that will still motivate West Virginia here. They did have a close game last week, though, so that would worry me maybe slightly. The fact that they came close. Luckily, TCU luckily won because I had them in Survivor, so I just needed TCU to win that game straight up, which they did. I'm still alive in college Survivor. I don't remember who I picked this week, though. I got to make sure that my picks make sense. But yeah, West Virginia, they were a big underdog in that game, and they covered, but I think it wasn't actually that close at the end. I think they were down 23-10, and they scored a garbage time touchdown at the end. So it wasn't really as close as maybe it looked on the scoreboard. So yeah, I would take the points with West Virginia in that one if I was going to play it. It almost looks too easy to lay the points with Houston, right? Like a one-loss team against this West Virginia team with a horrific record. So a little bit misleading looking there if you look at the records and the rankings there. 3:30 on the CW, number 16 Louisville, who has skyrocketed up into the rankings basically because of their upset win over Miami. Probably not the 16th best team in the country, though, so they're probably overranked as well because that'll give you some recency bias. Whoops, what did I just do? It's not even letting me go back now. What the fuck, man? I wanted to still be on the scores page, man. Oh, by the way, yeah, college basketball is coming up too. As you see here, it's back in the in the header here on ESPN, so I'm going to have to start doing college basketball and figure out how I want to do that. I think it starts on Monday, and then there are always like big boards, like I think on Tuesday and Saturday, so I might have to do college basketball show on Friday night and have to double it with the college football for a couple of weeks, and then that's going to really take a lot out of me, and then I don't know, and then college basketball on Monday nights as well. Fuck. I don't know what I want to do. All right, let me go back to this. I just went off the scoreboard here, which I did not want to do. Louisville and Virginia Tech. Louisville's going to be a big favorite here. I think they're still probably a bit overrated, though. I mean, their one big win was, of course, that game against Miami, and they also had an upset loss against Virginia, which was a loss for me on the show. I did get the win, though. I gave out the win against Miami. But other than that, they played a fairly weak schedule. I mean, yes, they played James Madison, and James Madison is one of the best non-power teams, so that is a pretty good win for Louisville. But last week, I mean, they just took it easy, I think, against Boston College. Just basically didn't even show up. BC covered the spread. There you go. I was correct about that lean. Now they got to go to Virginia Tech. Still, though, I think Louisville, just because they're a little bit overrated here right now, I just don't know if they're going to be able to cover a number like this. Virginia Tech, they fired their coach not too long ago. They've been playing a little bit better since then. They've had some competitive games. They got a win on Friday night, which does mean they have a little bit of extra time off, I think, because Louisville played on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. But that was a double overtime game, so I could see this going in a couple of different ways. Like, I don't usually want to play on a team that played double overtime because that will take a lot out of a team when they had to play 2 overtimes. But then, yes, they did get an extra day off, and the other thing is that they were a favorite in that game, and they did wind up covering, but when you're a favorite and you get taken into overtime, sometimes you kind of get shocked back into focus after that. So this is a tough game for me to handicap, man. Like, normally I would want to be looking towards the underdog, thinking that, yeah, the ranked team here, like Louisville's a little bit overrated. I still kind of worry about Virginia Tech, though, but they're probably going to show up for games like this where they get to host a ranked team. They have a pretty difficult remaining schedule, so it looks like they're probably not going to make a bowl this year. So if they want to do anything for the remainder of the season, I mean, probably they're going to show up for a game like this, though, at home against a ranked team. Some things to worry about, though. I mean, Virginia Tech's been able to run the ball fairly decently recently. Although Drones has actually been really bad at quarterback in some of these games, man, putting up some really bad numbers. I don't know why, because he used to be fairly good. He's no longer drone bombing out there. So this is Louisville. Louisville's up from a 10.5-point favorite to an 11-point favorite. They're public, 72% of tickets, only 61% of the cash on them. I'll lean to taking the points with Virginia Tech, but I don't love this one as much as I like all the other ones that I talked about more than that one so far. Number 2, Indiana, 3:30 p.m. Eastern here, is playing Maryland. This is on CBS. Is Indiana actually the second best team in the country? No, I would say they're not. They're probably a top 10 team. They're undefeated. I mean, they've been shockingly good this year, but they also haven't exactly faced that difficult of a schedule. I mean, that Illinois win really doesn't look that good anymore. Illinois, I was saying back then, there's no way Illinois deserved to be ranked as a top 10 team. They're not even a top 25 team. Iowa was able to hang in there against Indiana. Iowa's a very good defensive team, and Iowa definitely under the radar. Indiana's one really good win was the one at Oregon, obviously. I mean, that was a big win. Oregon is a legit team. So that was a good win. And then they didn't have a letdown. After that, they blew out Michigan State and then UCLA. Did they cover against Michigan State? I don't know if they did. I think they did not. Michigan State actually covered by 1.5 points or something in that game. But then they were able to blow out UCLA last week. They do have Penn State up next, though. And if you look at their remaining schedule, I mean, that's the biggest game left, believe it or not. Because, I mean, are they really going to focus on Wisconsin and Purdue? Probably not. I mean, it looks like Indiana is actually going to run the table and go undefeated. Seems fairly likely at this point that they will. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, Penn State's going to be the most difficult game they have left, having to go to Happy Valley. They do have to go to Maryland, so this is going to be their first time going to the Eastern time zone. Don't exactly love the spot for Indiana. I think they're maybe a little bit overrated right now. Maryland, this will be a game they show up for. And Maryland's actually coming out of a bye. So Maryland actually went into a bye on 3 straight losses. And yeah, they haven't stepped up in class very well. I mean, Maryland, their best win was the one at Wisconsin. They're actually an underdog in that game. But since then, they faced Washington, Nebraska, and UCLA, who I think are probably all better than Wisconsin. And they lost all of those games, although they were pretty competitive in those games. So give Maryland credit for that. Maryland lost every one of those games by 3 or 4 points. And then they went to a bye, and I think the bye came at a decent time for them because they were on a loss streak. So when you're on a losing streak, you go into a bye. That bye can stop that losing momentum and help you fix some things that are wrong. So I think the bye came at a decent time. I think the spot does set up better for Maryland here. I would look to take the points with Maryland. The number dropped a little bit from 23 to 21. Indiana is a big favorite still, obviously. 83% of the tickets and cash on Indiana. They're definitely a very public side. I would lean to taking the points with Maryland in that one if I was going to do it, which I will not, but those are my thoughts on that one. Not a whole lot else to say, but I think also Indiana, I know they've gone to the Pacific time zone once, and they did actually travel pretty well in that one, but going to the Eastern time zone for the first time, still a little bit of a weird travel spot there. ABC, 3:30 p.m. Florida and Georgia, or Georgia and Florida. I'm going to give out a play on that game, and you probably know what it is, so I'll skip that for now. 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 13, one-loss Texas Tech is going to Kansas State, to Manhattan, Kansas. Kansas State may be flying a little bit under the radar right now, man. I mean, they had higher expectations to start the season. So yeah, they fell short. They're not. I don't think they're going to make the Big 12 championship or anything like that. They have 2 losses, so maybe it's still possible. 2 conference losses, but we'll see. But this is going to be a game, Kansas State's probably going to get up for it because it's a ranked Texas Tech team. It's still I think atop the Big 12 coming into their place. So it's a big game for them. So I expect Kansas State to show up here. Texas Tech, keep in mind that Morton, their quarterback, is still injured. So it will be Hammond back in this one. Hammond, I believe, started the game against Oklahoma State, and it was such a blowout. I think they just rested him. So you're going to get a rested Hammond who has at least played some this year for Texas Tech. They had the nice bounce back after they took that loss. Their only loss of the season was on the road to Arizona State. And that was the injured player theory game, interestingly enough, the first game with Morton out. But it was a weird game. Arizona State also, it was a reverse injured player spot for them where they got their quarterback Levitt back temporarily in that game. And Arizona State, they just stepped up for the game. They wanted to put in a good game against Texas Tech, and they did. But Texas Tech, it could have been an iffy spot coming off of that game, and they were able to just blow out Oklahoma State anyway. Oklahoma State's not good. Now Texas Tech, they go to Kansas State, but after this, they got BYU, dude. And I take it back. I think BYU is actually atop the standings right now. Cincinnati actually behind them. So Texas Tech might actually look ahead a little bit to BYU here because BYU might be the most overranked team in all of college football at this point, man. I'm not buying BYU at all, but that's going to be a big game. So this could be a look ahead for Texas Tech, man. Maybe potentially looking ahead to that BYU game next week because that is a big game. And I expect Texas Tech to probably win that game against BYU, by the way. It'll depend maybe on what the spot looks like, but as you can tell, I'm leaning towards taking the points with Kansas State in this one as a lean. I'm not going to give it out as a play. I just don't think I could get there with Kansas State because they did win against Kansas last week, and that's their big rivalry game. Although, of course, Kansas State dominates that rivalry. I don't even know when the last time Kansas won in that rivalry was. But Kansas has actually played Kansas State close the last few years. So Kansas State blowing Kansas out, actually as a road underdog in that game, is a little bit of a different that's a little bit different than what we've seen over the last couple of years where we're seeing Kansas be competitive. And I thought Kansas this might be the year where they actually catch Kansas State and actually win the game. I thought that might be the case. That didn't happen. But the fact that Kansas State blew them out for the first time in the last few years could have Kansas State maybe riding that high a little bit. But will they overlook Texas Tech at home? I don't think so. So I think the spot is still worse for Texas Tech. It's going to be the, whatever it is, second or third game with Hammond or whatever his name is starting at quarterback. So Little bit of a downgrade for Texas Tech there as well. I don't think that's great for them either because they're no longer in the injured player theory spot. Texas Tech is up from a 7-point favorite to a 7 with juice with 57% of the tickets, 66% of the cash on them. I actually don't agree with the cash percentage on that one. I would lean to taking the points with Kansas State in that one. Won't be a play for me though. 3:45 p.m. Eastern before we get to the night slate. This is a weird time. Weird start time for this one on ESPN2. Number 15, Virginia, who only has 1 loss on the season and no losses in the ACC. They got to go to Cal. So on the surface, I mean, my first reaction to this was, well, an East Coast team going to the Pacific Coast seems like a little bit of a difficult spot because it's a weird travel spot. It would be worse if it was a late night game, though. Like these East Coast teams going out late to the West Coast, I think that's worse because it's like really late with their biological clock and like fatigue can set in. So the spot isn't quite as bad for that reason. But then if you look at what the spot looks like for these two teams, the spot actually starts looking pretty bad for Cal. Virginia, they're coming off a game where they almost lost at North Carolina, and it should have been an easier win for Virginia. Virginia was a double-digit favorite, 12.5 in this one, and they only scored 17 points, and they had to escape North Carolina in overtime. So I think Virginia got caught looking ahead, man, but they've actually played poorly 2 games in a row, and I think that other game that they played poorly against Washington State the week before that, where they only won by 2, I think they were completely overlooking Washington State, too, because that was an out-of-conference game, and Virginia had just come out of a bye after 2 big wins against Florida State and Louisville, both in upsets. So I think Virginia was in a bad spot in that one, too, coming out of the bye, because I think that bye just kind of hurt their momentum a little bit. So I actually think they're in a better spot after 2 close calls as a big favorite in both of them. Double-digit favorite. They almost lost both those games. But it's still going to be their first trip to the Pacific Coast. So that does worry me a little bit. So that's one reason why I don't want to play Virginia. The other reason is we don't really know how good Virginia actually is because those 2 wins against Florida State and Louisville actually aren't really looking as good now. Florida State is a below 500 team now. They're still, like, their only, like, good game was that one against Alabama, against a freshman quarterback in his first game, in Alabama's first game of the season. So, it is, I mean, Virginia might be a little bit overrated here, man. I don't think they're really the 15th best team in the country, so that does worry me a little bit as well. So a couple of things do worry me about that. Cal, though, they're coming off that double overtime game, and they're having to travel back to the Pacific Coast. So they're also having to travel cross-country, although, of course, they're going to be back home at the very least. And they're going to be hosting a ranked team, so you think maybe they will get up for it. But they did go into double overtime, and they almost pulled off the upset against Virginia Tech on Friday night prime time. So, yeah, the spot looks better for Virginia for that reason. Like, you got Virginia as a team that's coming off really poor performances as a big favorite versus Cal, who is coming off a good performance as an underdog. So usually you do want to look to the favorite to refocus and play better here. But just, I do have those hesitations with it that I just pointed out. The money is coming in on Virginia for what it's worth. They're up from 3.5 to 5.5 now. I don't think it's going to get to 7. So if you did want to lay the points with Virginia, 5.5 or 6, I mean, that's fine if you do want to do that. 65% of tickets on Cal. So Cal's actually a little bit public, which seems very strange to me. I don't see how a ranked 1-loss Virginia team is not the public side against Cal. That doesn't really jive with me. So that seems, the percentage just seems weird to me. It doesn't seem like it's right. But 68% of the cash of Virginia. I have heard some professionals talking about how they do like Virginia in this one. So I'll give a slight agreement with that one. I'll slightly agree with Virginia, but don't want to make that a play. South Carolina and Ole Miss is going to be my other play, one of my other 2 plays. So I have 2 plays that are in ranked matchups, and I think the other one is not in a ranked matchup. So I'll skip that one for now. Purdue and Michigan. Purdue still doesn't have a Big Ten win. Michigan's ranked 21st in the country. This is a 7 p.m. game on Big Ten Network. 7 p.m. Eastern. Michigan coming off beating Michigan State on the road, but not a very impressive win necessarily for Michigan, only winning by 11. But Michigan State, as I pointed out, Michigan State like always steps up their game to play Michigan. They're pretty much always the little brother in that rivalry. I believe Michigan State covered the number, although I think they had to score late to do that. Underwood had a really bad game for Michigan, though. I mean, Michigan runs the football a lot, though, so they're a pretty balanced offense, and they mostly rely on their defense. Michigan is definitely a good defensive team. Underwood is a little bit shaky still as a freshman quarterback, so I do worry about him a little bit. But of course, I mean, they're playing Purdue, so I mean, how much do you have to worry about them playing Purdue? I don't know. I mean, the spot, they are still coming off of winning a rivalry game against Michigan State, and they might not take Purdue totally seriously. And Purdue is still trying to get their first conference win here. Purdue's coming off another ugly loss at home against Rutgers. That's pretty bad. Yeah, Purdue sucks. I mean, they did get their quarterback back in that game. It looks like Brown, so maybe they were in kind of like a reverse injured player spot or something like that. I don't know what their quarterback situation was. But yeah, Purdue, I mean, their only 2 wins are just pathetic against a MAC team, Ball State, and then an FCS, Southern Illinois. Yeah, they're not a good team, but it is possible Michigan just doesn't really pay attention to this game. So if you want Purdue, I mean, that would be the reason why, is that Michigan just might not totally focus. And the fact that it's a game of the low total, because Michigan, they're more of a defensive team and a team that runs the football, so they're not as built to cover numbers. 76% of the tickets, 78% of the cash on Michigan, but they did go up, actually, a little bit from 20.5 to 21 as a 21-point favorite now. Slight lean for me to taking the points of Purdue, but I don't like that one that much either. The ones that I like more were the first few that I talked about, actually. I like Texas quite a bit. Just to point it out quickly, I like Texas and SMU probably more than the rest of them that I talked about. And then I would probably go maybe West Virginia, then Penn State. I don't know if I had to rank the ones that I talked about so far. Kansas State might make the mix there. Virginia I don't love, so I don't know. I don't love road favorites, to be honest. All right, ESPN2, 7:30 p.m. We have number 8 in the country, Georgia Tech, undefeated. I mean, I know I talked about in my season preview, I talked about how I did like Georgia Tech. By the way, season preview, if you want me to do a college basketball season preview, I could try to do that, but I don't really know a whole lot about the personnel at all, so it would be just me bullshitting about where the teams are currently ranked and just trying to completely guess. So if you want me to talk about that, I could. So maybe I'll do that prior to when it starts on Monday. But back to this, Georgia Tech. Yeah, I said they would be in the mix in the ACC. That was my prediction because I like their quarterback, Haynes King. He is good, but is Georgia Tech really the 8th best team in the country? No, absolutely not. Are they a top 25 team? I don't know. I actually don't know. I know a lot of the bettors that I listen to, their power ratings, they're telling me that they're basically saying that Georgia Tech's one of the most overrated teams in the country. It's basically Georgia Tech, BYU. Those are the teams that are massively, massively overrated. So something to keep in mind here. And a lot of those guys like the idea of taking the points with NC State this week, and I don't disagree with them. I'm not going to give it out as a play because I just don't really see a strong situation for it. But I do agree that Georgia Tech, the stock is just really, really high on them right now, and it's way too high, I think. They're 8-0 on the season, 5-0 in the ACC. They face a pretty weak schedule, though, man. I mean, what's Georgia Tech's best win? It's that win against Clemson, I guess. And now, how good is Clemson, really? I think they're below 500, so that win doesn't look very good anymore. And then, what have they done? They beat Colorado on the road. Colorado's an okay Big 12 team. They beat Temple, who's pretty good for an American team, but still, I mean, it's Temple. They had to go to overtime to beat Wake. Wake, I know, has a bunch of wins, but Wake isn't exactly that good. They've been playing a little bit above their pay grade, Wake has. And then Georgia Tech beat Virginia Tech, who's been in turmoil, fired their coach. They beat Duke in what I think was a misleading result in that one. Duke, I think, had kind of a crucial turnover in that one. I think Duke definitely had chances to win that one. And then they beat Syracuse last week. As we saw tonight, Syracuse is a terrible team. So Georgia Tech has had a really, really easy schedule, man. They're going to NC State. NC State's a competitive team. They're sitting at 500. They've been up and down. They still have Bailey, who's an experienced quarterback. Smothers, I mean, is actually a decent running back. This is Virginia Tech team. I mean, NC State. Why did I say Virginia Tech? NC State, they're a decently balanced team, man. A decent offense here. They're coming off kind of an ugly loss at Pitt. They've actually faced a more difficult schedule, I think, than Georgia Tech has, because NC State, just like them, has also faced Duke and Virginia Tech, although they lost both those games, whereas Georgia Tech won both of them. NC State has also faced Notre Dame and Virginia, and Notre Dame's a legit team, obviously. Notre Dame's the best team that either of them have faced, and it's not even close. Although NC State got blown out by them, but that was expected on the road as well. And then NC State did also play, again, they beat Virginia, actually. That's Virginia's only loss. Virginia's only loss was to NC State. And it was a game where, yeah, Virginia definitely had chances to win that game. I think it was a little bit of a misleading final. But NC State, I mean, they could compete in this game for sure. I think they're going to show up for it, obviously, because it's a ranked Georgia Tech coming into their place. And the line looks pretty short, man. You got an undefeated team ranked 8th in the country against an unranked 500 NC State team, and the line's down from 6 to 5.5. That looks way too easy to lay the points with Georgia Tech. 69% of the tickets on Georgia Tech, 54% of the cash coming in on NC State. So the money is saying NC State. I agree with it. It's certainly not a low total, though. It's at 58. So if you're taking the points, I still agree with it. I would agree with taking the points with NC State here. But if you're doing that, the points are not worth as much as maybe you would like, because the total's also high. It's expected to be a somewhat higher scoring game there. So just to keep that in mind. ABC at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Oklahoma, 18th in the country against Tennessee, 14th in the country. Those are their rankings. In this case, I don't think those rankings are that far off. I actually think maybe the teams are actually being a little bit, both of them I think are actually a little bit underranked. Oklahoma has a really good defense. Their offense has been struggling recently since Mateer got hurt. Like, it looks like maybe something's not right with him. He's come back, but it looks like there's just something not right with him. Tennessee has a really good offense, so generally this game is defense versus offense, and Oklahoma is the defense, Tennessee's the offense. I mean, that's generally the way that you could look at this game. So, yeah, you know me, I like looking towards the better defense getting points, and that is Oklahoma in this game. So is that the way that I actually lean in this game? I don't know. This is one of the tougher games for me to read, man. I tried to handicap this, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, this is definitely not going to be a game I'm going to give out as a play. Oklahoma, they faced, since Mateer has come back, they faced Texas. I mean, Texas is an elite defense, so I mean, you can kind of explain why Mateer wasn't good there, and that was Mateer coming back from injury too. He threw some picks in that one. South Carolina, at least their defense is fairly solid, and Mateer didn't do well in that one. Mateer did do a little bit better against Ole Miss last week, but that was one of my losses last week. I expected a better performance from him in that game against an Ole Miss team that's really just all offense, and they don't really play defense that well. So Oklahoma's coming off of that, and I think you can kind of see this in two ways. You could see Oklahoma maybe being in a bounce-back spot because they lost as a favorite to Ole Miss. But on the other hand, Ole Miss was the higher-ranked team in that game, even though the oddsmakers told you Oklahoma was actually the better of the two teams, which is part of the reason why I laid the points. But I also thought it was a good spot to fade Ole Miss, and it didn't happen. Oklahoma did not get the job done for us. So, again, Oklahoma did lose as a favorite, but that was a big game for them. I mean, they could have pulled off a win over Ole Miss, who was ranked higher than they were, and they fell short. So I could see it being a bounce-back spot for them, or I could see it being a hangover spot for them. I don't know which way it's going to go. I mean, I don't think they're going to be, lacking in focus, though, because they're playing Tennessee, and I think you step it up whenever you go and play Tennessee. Tennessee's coming off a much easier game, though, against Kentucky. I mean, that's somewhat of a rivalry game, but Tennessee is just the much better of those two teams right now, and Tennessee was able to get the job done. I don't know if they covered the number or not in this one. They did. They were only a 7.5-point favorites. Yeah, they covered the number in that one. They won by 18, and they're coming back home here. So the spot actually sets up better for Tennessee, I think, in this game. So this is actually a spot where I'm actually not going to lean towards taking the points of the better defense, although the money is actually disagreeing with me on this one. I would actually lean to laying it with Tennessee, but they're down from 4.5 to 3. So there's actually a reverse line movement against the public. The public actually likes Tennessee because the public likes offense more than they like defense. And they're probably looking at what these teams did the last few weeks, and they're off the Oklahoma train because Mateer hasn't been good, and they're on this Tennessee train because Tennessee's offense looks good. 73% of the tickets on Tennessee, only 59% of the cash. So the money is definitely saying Oklahoma, and the line has moved towards Oklahoma. I'm going to actually disagree with it, though, on that one. I think the spot is actually better for Tennessee based on what those teams did last week. So, rare spot where I actually kind of lean against the market in that one. 7:30, and that's not going to be a play, obviously, for me. 7:30 p.m. Eastern, NBC. We have USC, number 23 in the country, at Nebraska. This is an interesting one, too. I think Nebraska is a little bit under the radar right now, man. I mean, Nebraska plays good defense, and that's what you want against a USC team that's one of the best offenses in college football, but USC doesn't really play particularly good defense. So Nebraska is another one of those teams, even though I said I don't really love Oklahoma in their game. Nebraska is also a team that is the better defense getting points here in this one against USC. Looking at the market here, USC is down from a 5.5-point favorite to a 4.5-point favorite. 53% of the tickets are on USC. 53% of the cash, however, coming in on Nebraska. So the money is saying Nebraska. The public is slightly leaning towards USC here. So the money says taking the points of Nebraska. I don't really disagree with it in this game. I just don't really see like a strong enough angle for it. Although USC is coming off one of their big games of the season against Notre Dame, and they lost the game. Notre Dame actually wound up, I think, covering in the end by like a couple of points, and Notre Dame was a survivor play for me that week because I think in my game we couldn't use them for the rest of the season, so I was like, I'm going to use them here as a favorite, and they got the job done. They just had to win it straight up for me to get that one. But I also leaned to Notre Dame covering in that one, and they did. So if USC was playing immediately after that, I think this would be a better spot to take Nebraska because USC would be playing 2 games in a row on the road. Coming off that big rivalry game against Notre Dame, and they still are, but they had a bye after that. So they're coming out of a bye, and they did go into the bye on a bad note. So sometimes, again, like I said, when a team goes into a bye on a bad note, sometimes they will use that bye to fix some things, and they don't have a big game up next, even though it is a Friday primetime game, and they're hosting it, but it's against Northwestern, so I don't really think they're going to really look ahead to that. Yeah, so I could see this going in a couple of different ways here. So I don't think it's really that negative of a spot for USC. Although even so, they are still coming off a run of 3 ranked teams in a row, including 2 big games against Michigan and Notre Dame. They pulled off a big win over Michigan, and then they lost at Notre Dame. Another reason to maybe look against USC, by the way, is that USC has not done well when they've traveled out of the Pacific time zone. They have 3 road games this year, which are all, I believe, in the Central time zone against Purdue, Illinois, and Notre Dame. And they didn't cover any of them. They're 0-3 against the spread in those 3 games, and they lost 2 of them outright to Illinois and Notre Dame. Not going to blame them for losing to Notre Dame. And Notre Dame was a big favorite there. Notre Dame is definitely the better team. Losing to Illinois is a 7-point favorite, and we see that Illinois is not very good. That was not a great game for USC. So USC, they don't travel that well in the Big Ten, man. And that includes last year. They struggled when they traveled last year too. I know that was their first year in the Big Ten. Now this is their second year, but they're still not traveling well. Nebraska did play last week, but they had an easy game against Northwestern. They were a big favorite in the game, and Nebraska actually didn't do particularly well in that game. They only won by 7, which I think they probably should have. Actually, I don't know. The game was tied. What am I saying? The game was tied in the 4th quarter. So Nebraska actually kind of had to escape that game as a pretty big favorite against pretty ugly Northwestern team. So, yeah, I think Nebraska might be in a bit of a bounce-back spot. And Nebraska, they haven't been very good as a favorite this year because they're more of a defense-oriented team, but they're an underdog this time. So I lean to taking the points with Nebraska. You're getting a little bit less value doing it because it's another game with a pretty high total at 59. So just something to keep in mind there. That's because USC is really good offensively. So, yeah, slight lean for me to taking the points with Nebraska, though, in that one. And then ESPN late night at 10:15 p.m. Eastern. Cincinnati ranked 17th in the country, 7-1 overall, and undefeated 5-0 in the Big 12, going to Utah, who's ranked 24th in the country, 6-2 overall, and 3-2 in the Big 12. So Cincinnati's a 1-loss team, undefeated in conference, ranked 17th in the country. Utah's ranked 24th in the country. So Utah's ranked 7 spots lower than that. Yet you look at the number, Utah is a 10-point favorite. I mean, the odds makers are telling you what you need to know here, man. They're telling you that the rankings makers have this one very, very wrong. And Cincinnati is overrated for sure. Like, I don't think they're actually a top 25 team. I don't think they're really worthy of that. They're a pretty good offense, but they're not a very good defense. Utah is under the radar. I mean, you know me, I was high on Utah going into the season. They were my pick to win the Big 12 to start the season, which it looks like they may not be able to do that now. But I think Utah is still really good, and Utah probably should have won that game against BYU. I'm still bitter about that, even though I didn't have a play on that one. BYU is pissing me off because I'm constantly like saying you got to fade these guys. And I did with that Iowa State one and got fucked because of turnovers. BYU just pisses me off because they keep winning as an overrated team. Utah is one of the most underrated teams in college football right now, though, man. And yeah, you could have laid 7 on it earlier in the week, and now they're up to 10. I don't know if that was all like just from the money coming in Utah or if it was because of Utah's quarterback situation. I think some of it was the quarterback situation, so we didn't really know if Utah's quarterback Dampier was going to start this game, and I think it looks like now he is. So that number's up to 10, so he will play. For Utah, I don't know if it matters a ton who their quarterback is, although Dampier is their best quarterback. But Utah, they're a pretty balanced offense. They run the football a lot. They're a physical offense. They don't rely on their quarterback as much as a lot of other teams do. And Utah plays good physical defense, and that's why they're good in the Big 12, because they play against a bunch of finesse teams like Cincinnati. So I think Cincinnati might struggle with Utah's physicality, man. Cincinnati's more of an offense than a defense. Utah, probably the lesser of the two offenses here, but they're the much better defense. Although I know you're laying points if you want to play Utah here, but I would still do that if I was going to play this game. I mean, it looks like such a misleading number here. It's one of those rankings makers versus odds makers disparities here in a big way. Like, I think this is the biggest favorite that the biggest favorite that we've seen this season at the very least, as far as like teams that are the lesser of the two ranked teams. Like in a game where you have the lower ranked team being favored, I think this is the highest favorite, the heaviest favorite that we've seen this year, and it's the highest that I can ever remember, actually. 72% of the cash on Utah as well, with 62% of the tickets on Cincinnati. Public's going to see the rankings and the records and just want to go with Cincinnati, and the public loves the better offense too. I wouldn't agree with it. I would go with Utah in this game. You know me. I mean, I just continue to be a fan of Utah because I just think that you get value on Utah because of the style that they play and because they've lost a couple of games. Cincinnati, I'm not totally impressed by their resume. I mean, they had that one win over Iowa State, which I told you Cincinnati was going to win that game. I probably should have given it out as a play. I didn't. But Iowa State's overrated, man. And Cincinnati's faced a pretty easy schedule. I mean, the best team that they played, I think, was Nebraska at Arrowhead to start the season. Cincinnati played pretty well in that game, but they lost the game. I mean, they played competitively. They actually played well defensively in that game for whatever reason. But since then, they've had a weak schedule, man. I mean, the best teams they've beaten are Kansas on the road and then Iowa State at home. Those are their best wins. And then I guess Baylor last week. That was a decent win where I kind of thought Baylor set up nicely to cover that spread, and they didn't do it. But Cincinnati's definitely going to kind of be in for it here, man. Having to go to Elevation, play a late-night game. This is the furthest west that Cincinnati has to go, and they're going to have to play a game that's going to be really late on their biological clock, too. So I would lay the points with Utah in this one if I was going to play it. And as far as Utah's scheduling spot, yeah, I mean, they might be feeling a little bit high on themselves because they just pummeled Colorado 53-7. Whenever you score 50-plus points, I mean, you're going to be feeling pretty high on yourselves, but Dampier actually was out of that game. Ficklin came in, who's a dual-threat quarterback that they have, although so is Dampier. So either way, I just don't think it really mattered that much. I don't think they're going to be that high on themselves when they're playing a ranked Cincinnati team here on ESPN. So I don't think they're going to, have a letdown spot or anything like that, just because they scored a ton of points here. But another part of their offense that I forgot to point out is that their quarterbacks are dual-threat quarterbacks, Dampier being one of them as well. So I would lay it with Utah if I was going to play it. All right, let's see. Are there any other games I want to talk about before I get to my 3 actual plays here? This will be a shorter version of the college football game, a football show for once, I think. What other games did I want to point out, though, at all? Duke-Clemson, I guess I'll talk about because it's a non-ranked matchup. But these two teams are, they're not horrible teams. They're both in the Carolinas. Of course, Duke is coming out of a bye. I think both teams actually might be. Duke went into the bye on a bad note. They lost to Georgia Tech. It was a tough game. Duke had some opportunities to maybe win that game. So I think it is at least a positive that Duke went into the bye on a bad note. They can use that bye to fix some things. So I think Duke will show up for this one. Clemson is also coming out of a bye, and they also went into the bye on a bad note. They lost to SMU in the ACC Championship rematch. So both teams are kind of in similar spots there. Klubnik was hurt, though, and is he out for the season? I don't know. Let me see. I don't even know, man. Klubnik was out for the last game. Is he coming back? I don't know. I want to know if he's coming back. He did not play against SMU. We know that. It was an ankle injury. It doesn't look like it's season ending or anything, though. So if Klubnik is coming back, then that also means it's going to be a reverse injured player spot, right? Because Clemson played a game without him, and now he's going to come back, so they have to work him back in. Yeah, the bye can kind of help with that a little bit. So if you have the bye, you can like get your reps with that guy and it can help him come back from injury. But still, he's going to come back. Maybe the team's going to, still have to kind of get up to speed with him again and whatever. So there are slightly more indicators for me on the Duke side here, so I would lean to taking the points with Duke. Clemson's a 3.5-point favorite, which seems pretty low for a Clemson game against Duke at home. But the odds makers are telling you these teams are actually about even now, which is crazy. 53% of the tickets on Clemson, 56% of the cash on Duke, so the cash is indicating on Duke. I'm not going to disagree with it. I would lean to taking the points with Duke as well in that one if I was going to do it. UCF at Baylor is somewhat interesting, where it's Baylor. I mean, they're a team that relies mostly on their offense. They've lost a couple of games in a row now, though, to TCU, which is a pretty big in-state game there between Baylor and TCU. Then they lost to Cincinnati last week, a ranked Cincinnati game where I thought, a ranked Cincinnati team, I mean, a game where I thought Baylor was going to show up better than they did, and they didn't. So I don't know what their mindset is going to be coming out of that. And then they do have Utah coming up next, although it's after a bye. I don't know, man. And as far as UCF, I mean, UCF coming in, they've been a mediocre team this year too. They just broke a loss streak, and they did go into a bye, though, but they did break a loss streak going into that bye. So I could see that going two ways for UCF. When you break a loss streak with a win, and it's a win that's not going to make you overconfident because it was a win over West Virginia, sometimes that will give you some new momentum, but the problem is they went into a bye after that, so they couldn't play right away with that new momentum. So they went into the bye in kind of a bad time. So I don't know if I necessarily love it for UCF here, although the style that UCF plays is good to counter Baylor because UCF runs the football a lot and they slow the game down and play defense, and that's what you want when you're playing against Baylor, who is mostly an offensive team, and they kind of want to go, I think, a little bit faster. So in that respect, it sets up decently for UCF. The money is saying UCF here. Baylor's actually down from a 6.5-point favorite to a 3.5-point favorite. So I don't know if there's like an injury or something. I don't think their quarterback is injured or anything. Robertson, I don't think he's hurt. So I don't really know what spurred that line move, but you have 52% of the tickets and 62% of the cash on UCF. So the money is indicating on UCF. I'll agree with it, but it's a slight agreement in that one. All right. What other games did I even want to talk about here? A lot of these games are just not really that interesting. Army and Air Force I'll talk about because it's one of the Commander-in-Chief trophy games. The Armed Forces, even though both teams are a little bit down, Air Force is definitely down this year. Air Force did just break a loss streak, though. They got their first FBS win of the season against Wyoming, but then they went into a bye. So just like what I just said with whatever team I was just talking about. Who was I talking about? I don't even remember. UCF, I think. They couldn't continue that momentum because they went into a bye after that. They beat Wyoming, finally got a win there. And then they had to go into a bye, so that bye can maybe stop that momentum that they would have had. They're going up against Army. Army's the better of these two teams. The Air Force has been really, really bad defensively, although Air Force has actually been able to throw the ball a little bit, which is a little bit of a dynamic that these Armed Forces teams don't usually have. Army is also coming out of a bye, and I think that bye came at a better time for them because they lost to Tulane going into the bye, which is a pretty big game for them. Tulane's been pretty good this year, so I think that bye is actually going to be more helpful to Army because they went into the bye on a bad note. They're having to go out on the road again here, but at least they went into a bye that can kind of give them some more time to travel out there. And they're not like totally unused to traveling out there. However, I want to say that it's not like they're not used to doing that because they have to go to Air Force every other year at the very least. Army is getting some of the money, it looks like, and I agree with it. If I was going to play this, I would lean to Army. They're up from a pick 'em to a 1-point road favorite here. 58% of the tickets are on Air Force, so the public, for whatever reason, likes Air Force, and only 57% of the cash on Air Force. So the money is saying Army. It's a pretty low total, down to 48.5, and a lot of times you want to just look towards unders in these armed forces games because they run the football primarily. They're just, they're triple option attacks, but the money is kind of saying over as we see 50% of tickets on the under, but 55% of the cash on the over. It's a little bit different this year with Air Force because, as I said, Air Force can throw the football a little bit this year, and their defense is really bad. So I could actually see that game going over the total, whereas usually with these armed forces games, you kind of want to look towards unders historically, but maybe not in that one. But I think the better way to play that is Army on the side. I could see Army definitely being able to score against this bad Air Force defense, or Army over their team total might be a way to look. I don't do a whole lot with team totals, but if you kind of like the over and you kind of like a particular side, that seems to naturally make sense as well. Navy at North Texas is a pretty big game because you have an undefeated Navy team against a one-loss North Texas team. That, by the way, everybody saw North Texas lose really badly in primetime to South Florida, who's an okay team. But now people are going to look at this and see, oh my God, Navy's undefeated and North Texas has one loss, yet North Texas is a 7-point favorite. So the odds makers are telling you North Texas is actually the better of these two teams, and I agree with that. I would agree with laying the points with North Texas if I was going to do this. 60% of the tickets are on Navy, 51% of the cash on North Texas. So the money is saying North Texas as well. Navy hasn't lost yet, but they haven't played anybody good really yet. I mean, their best win is on the road at Temple. So there's not a whole lot you can take away from that, man. What has this Navy team done yet, really? I mean, nothing so far. So they have not been tested yet. This is going to be a big game, but North Texas has been tested a little bit more just because they played South Florida. And North Texas already played a service academy. They played Army earlier this year, so that should help them prepare for Navy, even though Navy's better than Army. It at least means that North Texas has faced a triple option attack already. So that's a good thing, although they didn't do that well. They had to go to overtime against Army, so yeah, they struggled a little bit. But I think at least they could kind of get that out of their system, and now they have faced a triple option already. So I would lay the points with North Texas if I was going to do this. Although we are seeing North Texas in a spot where they're coming off Mestimaker's historic performance with 608 passing yards, which was, I believe, a record for all levels of football in the United States throughout all of history. So he could be in like maybe a personal letdown spot after that. So that kind of worries me a little bit about North Texas. I still would lean to North Texas in that one, but a little bit difficult to want to actually get involved with that. Arizona State at Iowa State I'll talk about because it's a game between two decent teams in the Big 12 that are, still, I don't know if I want to say that they're in the mix for the Big 12, but they're still all right teams. They're both above 500. Arizona State just lost their quarterback for the season, man. Levitt, he came back again. They lost to Houston. He got hurt again, and now he's out for the season. So, yes, it is an injured player spot for Arizona State again here because that means Levitt's going to be out. That means they're going to have to step up their game again with the first game without their injured quarterback there. That means you're going to maybe get a little bit of value on them. They're going to step up their play, but they did not do well when they were in that spot before. They were at Utah the other time they were in the injured player spot, and they got blown out by Utah. Utah's better than Iowa State, though. So something to keep in mind there. So there are going to be some conflicting factors in this game, man, for me. Iowa State is coming off a loss, I think I said, right? Not Iowa State. Arizona State's coming off a loss, I think I said, right? Yeah, to Houston. So maybe you could see that as maybe being a bounce-back spot for Arizona State, too, because they did lose as a favorite against Houston last week. I believe they were a favorite. I think they were at home. I think they'd be a favorite anyway. Iowa State, they're coming off a misleading loss, though, man, to BYU. I don't want to really think about it because that was a loss for me. I gave out Iowa State. Thought it was a great spot for Iowa State coming out of a bye. They probably should have won the game. I mean, they were winning the game by 10 early in the game, and then the turnovers were the factor in this game, man. Iowa State outgained BYU by 85 yards in the game, but they were -4 in turnovers. They had more first downs. They had more time of possession. And, yeah, they lost entirely because of turnovers, and one of them was a pick six that really kind of swung the game. So that pissed me off. It doesn't mean Iowa State's coming off a big game against BYU, but it was a game where they looked worse than they actually were. And I do think Iowa State will show up for this game because this is a big revenge game. It's the Big 12 championship revenge game for last year because if you remember, Arizona State embarrassed Iowa State in that game last year in the Big 12 championship. The winner of that game was going to go to the playoff, and Arizona State beat Iowa State 45-19. So do you think Iowa State's going to remember that? Yeah, I think so as well. This is a difficult game. No, I don't want to bring up page info. What are you doing, man? It's a difficult game to handicap, man, because I know it is the injured player spot for Arizona State and debatably maybe a bounce-back spot for them, but I'll lean slightly to Iowa State here. I mean, you don't get the best number on them anymore, though. They're up from a 5-point favorite to a 7.5-point favorite. I think some of that was because of Leavitt, it being announced that he's definitely not coming back for the rest of the season. 54% of the tickets are on Arizona State, so the public kind of wants Arizona State here for whatever reason. 67% of the cash, though, on Iowa State. But again, you're not getting the best number on it now. You have to lay 7.5 with them. It would obviously be better to lay 7 or less because 7 is the key number here. I don't want to deal with it. It's a game where there's some conflicting factors there, again, like I said. But I think the revenge angle is kind of what puts it over the top for me for Iowa State. But, yeah, that's not going to be a game I'm going to get involved in. I'm going to talk about UNLV and New Mexico. UNLV, they took their first loss, man, and it was a big one against Boise State. I mean, that was a big game. UNLV against Boise State. I mean, that was the game that could have maybe propelled UNLV towards maybe potentially making the college football playoff, and they lost that game. So does that mean it's going to be a dream crusher spot now for UNLV? I don't know, because I don't know if can a one-loss Mountain West team that winds up winning the Mountain West championship still make the college football playoff? Maybe. So I don't know if I'm ready to totally say that it's a dream crusher for UNLV, but pretty brutal loss, but it might help them out a little bit with the fact that they did go into a bye after that. So if they were having to play again right away, I think I would say, yeah, like you want to fade UNLV. I still think maybe you do want to fade them here, but I'm a little bit less bullish on it than I would be if they were playing again right away. But that was still that was like their biggest game of the season, man, against Boise State. They lost the game. It was their only loss on the season. I've been talking about how overrated I think UNLV is as well. So all of that coming into play here. And sometimes when you take that first loss, especially when it's in a big game like that, it'll hang you over into the next game. Just the fact they had a bye might help them out a little bit with that. As far as New Mexico, I mean, they're looking to get their 6th win to become bowl eligible. They will, I think, at some point. I mean, they get a couple of winnable games coming up next, so they don't really necessarily need to win this one. But I think they'll be more focused here, although they did play last week against Utah State, but they had a nice, pretty convincing win over Utah State last week. So I think their momentum is just going to kind of continue into this one. I do think New Mexico will show up for this game, so I kind of lean to New Mexico in this one. Part of it is, just because I think UNLV is still an overrated team. They're down from 5 to 4.5 as a home favorite here. And when you look at these teams' records, you think that maybe UNLV, because they're a one-loss team, should be favored by a little bit more than that, which is not the case. So it looks maybe kind of too easy to lay the points at UNLV in like kind of the bounce back here. Like, oh, their only losses to Boise. Of course, they're going to beat a worse team like New Mexico. New Mexico, 53% of the tickets on them, though. I don't know if that's really accurate, but 61% of the cash as well. The line has moved in their direction a little bit. I think New Mexico is probably the correct side in that one. Will it be a play for me? No. No, it will not. All right. Let's see. What else was I going to... I don't know which other of these games I was really going to talk about here. I know I'm skipping a lot of the lower conference games, but most of them I don't really find that interesting. So when I see like a really interesting one, I will talk about it, but let me see. Michigan State and Minnesota. I don't know if I saw that much of an angle here, but I will point out that Michigan State did just have one of their biggest games of the season against Michigan. I mean, they always get up for that game, and they fell short. Now they got to go on the road to Minnesota. I don't think they're really going to be totally focused on Minnesota, although I know Minnesota has a winning record, so maybe that gives me a little bit of hesitation as far as saying that Michigan State won't show up. And the other thing is that Michigan State still doesn't have a win in conference. And I guess technically they're still fighting to become bowl eligible, though it's kind of unlikely at this point. So they do have some reasons to maybe still show up and try to win these games. You know, being winless in conference is still kind of a motivator, but they do have Penn State up next, so it is after a bye, but it does look a little bit sandwichy to me, even though Penn State is down this year. And I know, again, Minnesota's an above 500 team. Minnesota's coming off an embarrassing loss to Iowa, though, losing 41-3. I mean, Iowa, they're a very good defensive team, but losing like that is ridiculous. Minnesota was in a letdown spot. I did lean to Iowa in that game, but I didn't think Iowa was going to score 41 points. Minnesota had upset Nebraska the game before that, so it was definitely a letdown spot that Minnesota was in. I think the spot does set up better for Minnesota to bounce back here. It looks like a little bit of a sandwich spot on Michigan State to me, although the money's coming in on Michigan State, but I actually disagree with it. Minnesota's down from 5.5 to 3.5 here, so the money strongly agreeing on Michigan State for whatever reason. I think maybe just because Minnesota's a little bit overrated based on what their record looks like. 78% of the tickets are on Minnesota. 63% of the cash coming in on Michigan State. So the money's coming in, on taking the points with Michigan State, but I do actually lean to Minnesota slightly in that one. Pitt at Stanford, I kind of had an angle that I was looking at on this one. Pitt just got their 6th win, so they're bowl eligible, and I'm not sure that they really consider themselves to be like an ACC contender this year. So I think getting that 6th win to become bowl eligible is pretty decent, although Pitt, I mean, it seems like they're always in a bowl. I mean, they were in a bowl last year too, so I don't know if that's going to be like that big of a deal for them. And they are still a one-loss ACC team, so maybe they still think they're in the mix for the ACC. So maybe I'll dial it back a little bit on like, is Pitt going to be overconfident for that reason? But maybe they still will be because they did just crush NC State last week, and now they have to go to the Pacific Coast for the first time this year, which is not an easy spot to be in. And they do have Notre Dame up next, although it's after a bye. They got Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and Miami, so all ranked teams to finish the season, and those are going to be bigger games for them. So it is still, I think, a bad spot for them. Going to Stanford here, weird travel spot for Pitt, having to go to the Pacific Coast for the first time. Stanford, they're having to travel back, so this is the one thing that I worry about with Stanford is that they've been zigzagging all over the place, man. Saturday, October 11th, they were in Texas to face SMU. Then they came home to the Pacific Coast. They beat Florida State in a big upset. Then last week, I thought they were in a bad spot, letdown spot off of that upset. They had to go all the way back to the East Coast. They got crushed by Miami. Now they're coming back home again. So they're doing a lot of travel. So that's what worries me a little bit here. Although I do think the spot is a little bit worse for Pitt here. But I don't really want to give out taking the points with Stanford just because of all the travel that they're doing. Although it is going to be a weird travel spot for Pitt, too. I'll lean to taking the points with Stanford, but I'm not as strong on it. Pitt's up from 14 to 14.5 here as a double-digit favorite here. 75% of tickets, 76% of the cash on Pitt. But I don't know if that 1% difference really is going to – that doesn't matter that much to me right now. I'd have to see how the market shapes up a little bit. But Pitt is definitely the public side there. So just something to keep in mind there. As far as the rest of these games, I'm going to give out one more play on one of these unranked games. Other than that, I don't see a whole lot going on here as far as the rest of these games are concerned. Are there any other games I even want to talk about here? Maybe not. Maybe I'll keep it as a little bit of a shorter. I'm going to talk about Kentucky, Auburn, then I'll give out my plays, and then I'll get out of here. Kentucky and Auburn. SEC Network, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. This is a little bit of an interesting one. Kentucky, they're coming off playing 3 big games in a row against ranked teams, man, against Georgia, Texas, and then Tennessee. But they did have a bye before the Texas one. If you remember, I gave out Kentucky on the show against Texas, and they were able to cover, and they almost won that game. And then after that game, I thought they were in a little bit of maybe a letdown spot coming off of that against Tennessee, and they did lose, and they failed to cover against Tennessee last week. Although I think I ultimately leaned to taking the points with Kentucky in that one because I think Tennessee was also in a bad spot coming off the Alabama game, but I think I should have disagreed with myself in that one because Kentucky, they had almost beaten Texas, man. So, I mean, coming off of that, that was a bad spot for them. They lost. They didn't cover against Tennessee. Now they're going to Auburn. They do have Florida up next. I mean, are they going to overlook Auburn for Florida? I don't know. But off of that run that Kentucky just made against those three teams, yeah, I don't really love it. And Auburn's sitting at 4-4. I still think they're better than this 4-4 record would indicate. Auburn actually got a little bit of a reprieve last week, and they won at Arkansas. And I think that's actually good for Auburn because Auburn had a run of 4 ranked teams in a row, and they lost all 4 games. And they actually played pretty competitively in all 4 games. So this Auburn team, I think, is actually better than people think they are. I think they're a bit under the radar right now for that reason. I think that win is good against Arkansas because it'll end their losing momentum. Interestingly for Auburn, they actually took Jackson Arnold out of the game. He was their quarterback, and they actually replaced him. And I don't think it matters that much, but it is just kind of interesting that Auburn's changing with their quarterback, as even though Arnold is like a decent dual threat. But Auburn, they like to run the football. They got Cobb as their running back. He's been pretty good this year. So this Auburn team, they're fairly balanced all around. They play decent defense, balanced offense, a little bit more of a rushing attack, I think. And I think they can handle Kentucky, although Kentucky is a better defense than offense. Kentucky is a team, that also likes to kind of run the football and play defense. But I think the spot does set up a little bit better for Auburn in this one. And I think Auburn's just undervalued. I mean, the odds makers are telling you Auburn's a significantly better team as they're up from a 10-point favorite to an 11-point favorite, and they are taking the money here. 66% of the tickets, 60 sacks. Have sex 60 times during this game. 66% of the tickets, 74% of the cash on Auburn. So the money seems to be coming in on Auburn, but it is also expected to be low scoring because these teams are defensive. So I worry about laying a double-digit favorite in a game like that as well. Total down from 47 to 45. 62% of tickets on the over. Only 50% of the cash on the over. So that does worry me a little bit in that one. So I have some reservations about actually laying the points with Auburn. It seems like the money's coming in towards the under in that one, is what I should say. I'm out of my mind, man. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. Actually, I am going to talk about a few of these other games real quick. Washington State at Oregon State on CBS. I feel like I have to because this is the only Pac-12, Pac-2 matchup possible because they're the only 2 teams in this conference. And Washington's a 4-4 team, and Oregon State's 1-7. Yet, Washington State's only a 3.5-point favorite. So, like, what gives? It looks way too easy to lay the points with Washington State here. They got 93% of the tickets and only 92% of the cash. So, I would look towards taking the points with Oregon State here, man. Washington State, I know they've played competitively against some pretty decent teams. I mean, against Ole Miss, against Virginia. They caught those teams in bad spots, though Washington State was also in a bad spot against Virginia, but they both were. But look at the travel that Washington State's had to do, man. They had to play 3 straight games on the road, although there was a bye after going to Colorado State. But they had to go to Ole Miss, then Virginia, then they came back home. They actually beat Toledo in what I thought was kind of a bad spot for Washington State after doing all that travel and after playing really well as a big underdog. I thought Toledo would win that game. This is a little bit of a misleading final with Washington State winning 28-7 because statistically Toledo played that game a little bit closer. Washington State didn't do that much offensively at all. Now they have to go back out on the road again to Corvallis. I don't think it's that easy of a spot for them, man. And for Oregon State, they face a somewhat difficult schedule as well. They played Texas Tech and Oregon. I mean, nobody would expect them to win either of those games on the road. They took Houston to overtime, which if you remember, that was a win for me on the show. I thought it was a bad spot for Houston going out to Corvallis, a weird Pacific Coast travel spot there for Houston. And Oregon State almost pulled off the upset in that one. And yeah, since then they haven't really played anybody that good. I mean, they did play Wake, but whatever. But Oregon State, they got their first win finally, although it was against an FCS team in Lafayette. But finally, Oregon State got a win, so they're not a winless team anymore. So I think when you do that, you don't get overconfident because it was a weak opponent that they won against, but still, that they beat, I should say. But still, you get that one win, it's like you get that monkey off your back, man. Now, all right. We're not a winless team anymore. They did go into a bye after that, but I don't know that bye will actually stop that like newfound momentum necessarily. I think they're going to use that bye to maybe like figure out some things, because this Washington State game, I mean, this is the big game of the season. I guess they have a de facto conference championship game also against Washington State next, or I guess the teams play each other home and away, I guess, because they're the only teams in this conference. I don't know. I don't know how it works exactly, but I guess that's the case. But I think it sets up a little bit better for Oregon State. The line looks very, very misleading on this one. With all the travel Washington State has done recently, could be a little bit tired. I would lean to taking the points with Oregon State in that one. Wake at Florida State. I'll talk about this briefly as well. Wake at 5-2 here, but I don't think they're really as good as that 5-2 record makes them look. They're coming off that nice win that I gave out on the show last week. I thought it was a nice setup for them. Even though they'd gone into their bye on a win streak, I still thought the spot for SMU was really bad. Wake had gone into the bye on a win streak, but the spot was so bad for SMU that I didn't think it was going to be that much of a momentum killer for Wake, is what I should say. Wake was able to get the win as a small home underdog in that one. A nice win for Wake. Now they're going to go out on the road again to face Florida State. And up next, they do have ranked Virginia. So I don't know if I love the spot here for Wake, man. For Florida State, what does the setup look like for them? I mean, Florida State basically has been bad since their opener where they pulled off that upset against Alabama. And that was looking like an outlier because since then they just have not been good. But they are coming out of a bye, and they went into the bye on basically the worst note possible. They had to go to the Pacific Coast, and they lost as a big favorite at Stanford. So they went into the bye on like at the best possible time, man, because they went into the bye on such a bad note that they can fix a lot of things that were going wrong. So I think they're going to come out focused out of that bye. So the spot sets up better for Florida State, in my opinion, in this one. I would lay the points with Florida State if I was going to play this one. Wake is actually a public underdog. Go figure that Wake is a public side against Florida State. The odds makers are still telling you Florida State's a better team. You could have laid 8.5, I guess, earlier in the week. It is up to 10 now, so it's gone to that key number of 10. I wouldn't really necessarily want to lay more than 10 here, but I would lean to doing it. If I was going to do it, I would lay the points with Florida State. 64% of the tickets, only 63% of the cash on Wake. So the money is agreeing with it as well. Florida State is one of those nice anti-public favorites, anti-public home favorites. That's almost like the sweet spot, man, because you know you're putting your money on a good team. If you do that, although is Florida State a good team? I don't know, but they're still better than Wake Forest at the very least. You at least know you're putting your money on a relatively good team relative to their opponent, and their records are misleading right now. So I would lay the points of Florida State in that one. And then the bailout special at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, I actually find to be kind of an interesting game on CBS Sports. It's Hawaii and San Jose State. Two teams in the Mountain West. Hawaii 6-2 overall, 3-1 in the conference. San Jose State underperforming a bit at 1-2 in the conference at 2-5 overall. I don't know that Hawaii's been that impressive, man. Hawaii, yeah, I mean, they're starting to play a little bit better. Fourth year under Timmy Chang or whatever his name is there. He's a decent coach. Hawaii, they've been able to throw the football decently. I mean, that's what they do. They just throw the football. They don't really run it well. They don't necessarily play great defense either. Sometimes they get an advantage of playing at home because teams have to fly out to Hawaii. So sometimes that's a disadvantage when Hawaii catches those teams out in Hawaii. But Hawaii has not played a difficult schedule at all, man. I mean, the one decent team they faced really was Arizona, and they got obliterated by Arizona, 40-6. So they do not have an impressive resume. And Hawaii did go into the bye on a bad note, on a good note. They got the bye at a bad time, is what I mean to say. They went into the bye on 3 straight wins against Air Force, Utah State, and Colorado State. Those are not good teams, so those are not impressive wins. But when you go into a bye with momentum like that, it can be a momentum killer coming out of that bye, man. I don't know if they came back, if they went back to Hawaii after, because they finished up at Colorado State. So I don't know if during the bye they went back to Hawaii. Now they're going back out to the mainland to San Jose State. I don't know, man. And of course, Hawaii is used to it because they have to do this every year. But still, it's kind of a lot of travel. It's not the greatest spot for them, I don't think. San Jose State, they face a much more, not a much more difficult schedule, but they face a more difficult schedule just because they face Texas. San Jose State is also coming out of a bye, though, and they went into the bye on a bad note on 2 straight losses at Wyoming and at Utah State. So San Jose State, yeah, I mean, they're expected to do much better things this year, and they just haven't been able to do it. I mean, they're also an offense that mostly throws the ball, although they've had some decent rushing performances, whereas Hawaii really hasn't. San Jose State, now they went into the bye on a note where they could possibly fix some things because they went into the bye on the bad note. They probably should have covered at Utah State on that Friday primetime game, and they failed to do so. So I think the spot sets up significantly better for San Jose State, man. Hawaii, they're already bowl eligible again. They got their 6th win already. The money right now is saying Hawaii, but I don't agree with it. This is close to a play for me, actually. San Jose State's down from 2.5 to 1 here. And they're kind of an anti-public favorite, though. 76% of the tickets and 83% of the cash on Hawaii. So it's interesting to see Hawaii, the team with the way better record, as an underdog against a team with a bad record like San Jose State. But the odds makers are telling you Hawaii is only the slightly better team here. And the public, basically, they see the pick to winner price. Hawaii is a slight underdog and think that, oh, it makes sense to take Hawaii. And again, this is the last game on the slate, so it's the bailout special. And sometimes the public plays this game a little bit more than they would otherwise in a game with teams like this because it's the last game on the board. So the public, when they lose money that day, they want to try to get their money back. And this is the last game on the slate. So they're going to be like, oh, I get Hawaii as an underdog. Let's put my money on this. So in the bailout special, yeah, sometimes the public will come in on this game. Sometimes they'll get it wrong. I like San Jose State in that one. I don't think I could quite make it a play, but I do kind of like it. It's kind of that inverted buy situation in that one. Let's get to my plays. Let's go to the best bets, and then I'll get out of here. And hopefully we're going to get some winners here, man. The first one up, we're going to go to that Georgia-Florida game, which is the game where you're not allowed to call it the world's biggest outdoor cocktail party anymore because everyone's offended by everything now. You're not allowed to tell people to drink anymore, man. It's just like where I live, Massachusetts, happy hours have been banned since the 80s because a dude drank and committed a DUI and killed somebody, and now we've not had happy hours since then. Although, of course, people still drink after work. These restaurants and bars just get around it by offering other discounts, whatever. It's just so stupid, man. And part of the reason for it, actually, I didn't know this. Another thing that caused the happy hour to get banned is we had this restaurant in Massachusetts called the Ground Round, which was it was supposed to basically be like a circus atmosphere. It's very, very strange. I used to go to it as a kid. It was definitely fun for families to go. They had some weird and some kind of decent menu items. They had popcorn. You could get free popcorn, free peanuts, and one of the things was you would throw the peanut shells on the floor. So like I said, it was like being in a circus or at a stadium or something. They're like, yeah, you eat your peanuts, you just throw the peanut shells on the floor and we'll clean them up. It's so weird, dude, for that to be it was like a family restaurant and they served burgers. Their food was actually not that bad. They had some decent burgers. I think they had some prime rib and some other stuff. It wasn't that bad. They went out of business, and part of it I think was because they were just I don't know, the time kind of passed them by because their atmosphere was too rowdy, and it got to be a place where it was almost like a lawless restaurant. It was the libertarian restaurant, the anarchist restaurant where people would go and it was just anything flies. You're throwing peanut shells on the floor here. You can drink whatever. I don't even know if anybody's listening to me in the chat right now, but I'm going on one of my Toad stories or Toad tangents here. But I think with the happy hour, these stupid drunk idiots during one of those happy hours at one of the Ground Round restaurants decided to drive a vehicle with a guy on the roof of the vehicle. And I don't think anybody died in that incident, but I think there might have been an injury or something. I don't know exactly what happened, but that also led to the happy hours getting banned. It's just, which they still shouldn't be banned. It's just fucking ridiculous. Mr. Pinsey, what's up, man? Thanks for still hanging out. I mean, these shows are so long, dude. I'm like, does anybody actually want to listen to this? I don't know. Maybe I got to switch it up. But anyway, that came across my mind. All right, best bets, as I already said, first game up. We're going to the world's biggest. Oh, that was the segue. The world's biggest outdoor cocktail party. We're still gonna call it that. Do you think that the fact that they don't call it the fact that they don't call the game that anymore, do you think it's going to stop the students from drinking a shit ton at this game? Hell no. This game's at 3:30 p.m. I'm going to take the points with Florida in this one. Florida +7. Georgia's going to be the public side. Right now, it looks like they're getting the cash, but I don't think it'll stay that way by the time the game kicks off. They're down from a 7.5-point favorite to a 7-point favorite. If you can get the 7.5, obviously, go ahead, try to do it. I don't know if we're going to see the 7 disappear, though. So I don't know if you could wait and maybe get the 7.5 on this. I mean, if you could take the 7, I think that's still fine. I wouldn't want it to drop to 6.5, though. So that's kind of the concern. Like, which way do you think it's going to go? I mean, the public might come in on this and keep the line at least 7. So maybe, potentially, you'll see the 7.5 again. But I'm fine with taking the 7 on this as well. 81% of the tickets, 88% of the cash on Georgia right now. Don't know if it's going to stay that way. It's not a particularly low total at 50, but still, it's not really high either. But the way that this game sets up, I mean, Georgia's the 5th-ranked team in the country, man, and Florida is a below 500 team, and yet you're only having to lay a touchdown with Georgia. It just looks way too easy to lay the points with Georgia here, man. And Florida, well, I'll talk about Florida in a minute. I'll talk about Georgia first because they're the road team here. Yes, they're only a 1-loss team, so yes, they're in the mix for the SEC right now. But Georgia, they just went into a bye, man. So I think the bye can kill their momentum a little bit, man. They just went into the bye on a good note. They won 3 games in a row. They beat Ole Miss going into the bye. That was a nice win for Georgia. Now they're coming out of a bye, and I think that bye might stop their momentum a little bit. And by the way, Georgia, I mean, they haven't exactly been that impressive when they stepped up in class. They went on the road, and they barely got by Tennessee in overtime. They lost at home to Alabama, although we know Alabama's really good, and the whole thing, Alabama basically always beats Georgia, fine. They were not great against Auburn, and I think Auburn really should have covered that number. I mean, there were chances for Auburn to maybe win that game until the refs screwed them. So that wasn't impressive. And then last week, Georgia, they had to make this huge comeback just to win and cover against Ole Miss late in the game. I think they scored 17 unanswered points very late in the game to beat Ole Miss in the fashion they did. So they could have lost that game too, 2 weeks ago, I mean, going into the bye. So Georgia, I know the thing is, like, you know, Georgia basically, under Kirby Smart, basically they beat every team except Alabama. I know that's the thing, but I think this Georgia team is not really quite as good as the Georgia teams that we've seen in recent years. And again, like I just talked about, their performance hasn't been that impressive. And now they're coming out of a bye that came at a bad time. And for Florida, yeah, they're not going anywhere this year. Yeah, they're below 500, but if they're going to get up for a game, you know it's going to be this game. I mean, they're going to maybe get up for a couple other games that are remaining this season, but when the team's not going anywhere, the games that they're going to get up for are games against ranked teams and rivalry games. And this is a huge rivalry, and Georgia has owned this rivalry recently as well. Florida has not won this game since, I think, 2020. So I think the game is a bigger deal for Florida right now because they want to try to get this win. Georgia, you know, they've just owned the rivalry the last few years, like I said. And this is actually a game where maybe Florida can actually show up, maybe actually potentially be in the mix to maybe win this game. Florida also is coming out of a bye, so both teams are. But Florida went in on a worse note, in my opinion. They had lost to Texas A&M, although you can kind of explain why they lost to Texas A&M because, well, it was on the road, and Texas A&M's pretty good. But Florida was also kind of in a letdown spot because they'd beaten Texas the week before that, so didn't expect them to be able to win against Texas A&M. And then the week after that, coming off 4 straight games against ranked opponents, so they had a bye mixed in there. They played Mississippi State, and they barely got by them going into the bye, so they did not go into the bye on a good note, even though they won the game against Mississippi State. Florida State was like an 8.5 point favorite, maybe 9, whatever it was, and they barely got by Mississippi State in that game. So I think they actually went into the bye at a bad note. So I think they got the bye at a much better point in the season than Georgia did. And by the way, what did Florida do the other time they had the bye? Oh, yeah, they came out of the bye and they beat Texas. So yeah, Florida, they used that bye to their advantage. Now, I know their coach is different now, so yeah, they might not use the bye as effectively this time, but they fired their coach, man. So this is also the fired coach spot for Florida, so I think that's another positive for Florida here, man. So I know Billy Napier, I guess, used the bye well, which is why they came out of that bye and they beat Texas. but now they fired Billy Napier after the Mississippi State game. And I still think that's a good thing because whoever their interim coach is, he's going to get 2 weeks basically to prepare for this game with the team. So I think that's good. So you got a couple of things going for you here with Florida for that reason too. So not only did I think the bye just generally came at a better point in the season for Florida than it came for Georgia here, but the fired coach just generally will spark a team. I talk about this on the show a lot. When a team just fired their coach, a lot of times the team just wasn't buying into that coach's system. I don't think Florida's players like Billy Napier. I really don't. So I think this is going to spark the team for that reason. They just didn't want to play for the guy. But also I think the team's going to want to prove that it was not the player's fault, that it was the coach's fault. So that's the other reason why with the coach getting fired, the team usually has a spark and plays well in that first game because they didn't like the coach and or they want to prove that the problem wasn't them. So I like all that too. And the fact that that came during a bye is also a benefit because, again, the new coach, who I think is an interim, who's been in the system anyway, can work with the team for an extra week. So I think that's really helpful. So I think they fired the coach at a good time to do it too. So for all those reasons, I like Florida in this one, man. And again, say what you will about Florida, but they've actually been pretty good defensively, at least this year. So that's another thing, another reason why they might be able to hang in this game, plus the points. So I like Florida, man. A lot of things kind of coalescing in that one. So, thank you, sir. I appreciate the positive comments as well. I think I ran Jeffrey out of town by being way too emphatic about hating being wrong about the World Series. I don't think he usually comes for these late night shows. I think he only comes for the morning shows. So we'll see. But I don't know where the rest of the guys are tonight, though. Nate usually comes in for these late night shows. I don't know, man. All right, next up, we're gonna have. We're going to go to the SEC for another game here. We're going to lay the points with Arkansas, -4.5. I like this one as well. And this is going to be against Mississippi State, I believe. Yeah. Arkansas, first of all, you see the fact that Arkansas is laying points, and they're actually up from 4 to 5 here, and they're actually taking the money. 50% of the tickets are evenly split here, but 65% of the cash on Arkansas. So the money's actually coming in on Arkansas. And by the way, this is a very high total. It's 67.5. So that, and the money's coming in on the under a little bit, but still, it's expected to be a high scoring game. And that makes it easier for a favorite to cover a number when it's a high scoring game. So just a little bit of extra something to keep in mind. But looking at this game, you got to look at this game and look at these teams' records and think, why the hell is Arkansas laying points when they're a 2-6 team and Mississippi State's 4-4? So it looks very strange that Arkansas is laying points here. But the odds makers are telling you Arkansas is actually the slightly better team. I know Mississippi State's improved a little bit this year. Both teams have faced a somewhat difficult schedule. I think you could argue that Arkansas faced the more difficult out-of-conference schedule only because they faced Notre Dame and Mississippi State faced Arizona State, and Notre Dame's the better of those two teams. So the out-of-conference schedule has been a little bit more difficult for Arkansas. And other than that, I think the teams have faced somewhat comparable SEC slates. But Mississippi State, I mean, both teams have been bad in the SEC slate. But Mississippi State, they're coming off two really tough performances in a row. Remember, they took Florida to the limit, like I just mentioned, and almost covered in that game. And by the way, 3 of their last 4 games have actually done that. So, I mean, one argument could be, yeah, they've been competitive, so maybe this Mississippi State team is not that bad. But I think the other argument is they're just going to be really tired at this point because on the September 27th, they took Tennessee to overtime, and they fell short and lost that game. Then they got killed by Texas A&M coming out of that. I think I gave out Texas A&M in that game, and that was a winner for us on the show, laying a pretty big number with Texas A&M. They were able to get there in the end and score late and cover that number. Then Mississippi State, again, they played tough. They actually had a bye. Then they came out of that bye, and they played tough against Florida. So this is over a span of 5 weeks, 4 games in 5 weeks. They played 4 tough opponents. They played Florida. They took them to the limit. And then they came off of that, and they took Texas to the limit, too. Took Texas into overtime last week. So I think at some point the steam's going to run out, man, for Mississippi State. And I think it might be here. I mean, that's just too many big games, too many close calls. to have as like a big underdog like that. And the fact they took Texas into overtime, fell short, and Texas's backup quarterback beat them in overtime. That is just brutal, man. They had Texas on the ropes. They almost beat Texas. Now they got to go and play Arkansas. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look very good for Mississippi State here. And they do have Georgia up next. They have all ranked teams coming up next, so could be maybe a little bit of a look ahead. I mean, I guess you could argue that Mississippi State's going to be trying to get to a bowl because I don't think they've been to a bowl. They at least did not make one last year at the very least. So maybe you could argue they're trying to become bowl eligible, but they might realize it's probably not going to happen because they're going to be an underdog in all their remaining games here. So even though this one coming up is the most winnable of them, I think it sets up better for Arkansas. Arkansas, yeah, they also have not won in conference. They actually haven't won since September 6th. It was against a really bad Arkansas State team, which is their only FBS win, I know. But they faced a gauntlet, dude. They faced Ole Miss, Memphis, who is now in the rankings. Memphis isn't really that bad. Notre Dame, like I said. So their out-of-conference was more difficult because they faced Memphis and Notre Dame. Then they faced Tennessee, Texas A&M, Auburn. I mean, those are all solid SEC teams as well. And they actually play competitively. So you could make the same argument for both Mississippi State and Arkansas as far as these teams have played some of these teams competitively. Yeah, they have. Arkansas only lost by 3 at Tennessee. They only lost by 3 against Texas A&M. But last week they had a bad game at home against Auburn, man. So I think they're kind of in more of a bounce-back spot now after that. That was a game where I just think maybe they ran out of steam because they had played 2 weeks in a row. They played really tough against Tennessee and Texas A&M. I think maybe they just landed in a hangover spot, and I thought it was kind of a hangover spot for both teams in that Arkansas game, and I think maybe it was a little bit worse for Arkansas because Auburn's the better team over Arkansas too, but Auburn was coming off playing Missouri, which I think was a little bit less of a grueling game than what Arkansas was coming off of, so you can kind of explain that. Arkansas, this is going to be their last home game until they play Missouri at the very end of the season. Yeah, I like it. We'll lay the points with Arkansas, man. Hopefully that analysis made enough sense. And then to finish it off, I'm actually going to give out a total. I know I'm being really dangerous here, man, because I was like, am I forcing it? Because I was like, am I really going to only give out 2 plays? Although it's actually going to be 5 college football plays this week because I've already given out 3. And we lost 2 of the 3, so isn't that excellent? But we're going to go with the total, and we're going to also still stick in the SEC here. This is the way that it worked out. We're going to go with South Carolina and Ole Miss over the 55.5. And I know you might be thinking, well, I've talked about how bad South Carolina's offense is. I know their offense has been pretty bad. They've been really bad on like the first couple of downs. Like I said, they were like last in all of college football for a while in yards to gain on 3rd down, but Ole Miss is not a very good offense, and they play frenetically fast. They're not a very good defense. They're a very good offense. They're not a very good defense. So Ole Miss, like just them on their own, they profile as an over team because they're all offense, no defense, and Lane Kiffin just likes to go hyper speed and go really, really fast. So that's part of the handicap here. So I think South Carolina should be able to score some points against Ole Miss. Both teams are in bad spots. So when I was looking at this game and thinking, well, what side do I want to go with here? I was like, maybe I'll actually just give out an over here. And by the way, the couple of leans that I gave out I should go back to the hockey overs, maybe because the couple of leans I gave out on the hockey overs, I think have actually hit. I'm pretty sure that Duck over the Ducks against whoever the hell they were playing tonight, I think that game was going to go over. Ducks and Red Wings, I think it was already at 5 goals at the end of the second period, I think. So I'm pretty sure I was correct about that lean. Although I don't know, because I think the total was at 6.5, so maybe I'll still be wrong about that. Anyway, back to this game. South Carolina, they played 3 weeks in a row against strong teams, against LSU, Oklahoma, and Alabama. And last week I gave out South Carolina on the show. Thought it was a bad spot for Alabama, and Alabama almost got caught, man. South Carolina was tied with Alabama late in the game, and Alabama beat them on a late touchdown. I think South Carolina might actually have been winning that game in the 4th quarter, and they blew it. So it's a bad spot coming off of this, man. I know it's Ole Miss. Usually you're going to get up for that, but they almost beat Alabama, dude. I mean, that was kind of their game with a South Carolina team where they know they're not going anywhere this year. That could have been the game, man. They could have had that, and now I think they're going to be a letdown spot, but we're going to see in a minute that Ole Miss is also in a bad spot. So I think what we want to do is actually go with the over here, and it's for a couple of reasons, which I think both are going to affect the defense. And I think that it's, first of all, I think these teams are going to be tired coming off of the stretch of games that they've been on. So the fatigue, I think, sets in more on the defensive side than on the offensive side. The defense just can't keep up with the offense. So you're going to have the fatigue factor. But I also think on the Ole Miss side, you're also going to have Ole Miss maybe not totally being focused here. Because Ole Miss, I know they're 7-1. I know they're 4-1 in conference. So, yeah, they're trying to make the SEC title game. And they could run the rest of the table here. I mean, they don't have a very difficult schedule remaining. They get their most difficult opponent remaining is Florida, and they get them at home. So it is fairly likely that Ole Miss is going to win out here and wind up in the SEC title game. Of course, that means they have to win this game, but they could also win it in a high-scoring fashion. It won't matter, man. And they're coming off playing Georgia, and that was that game that I mentioned a little while ago where they were potentially, I think they were winning the game against Georgia. Yeah, they were winning it. And then Georgia scored 17 unanswered points to win the game right at the end. Brutal way for Ole Miss to lose that game. And then second straight road game for them, they just pulled off an upset at Oklahoma, who's a pretty punishing defense, man. So they've actually faced two punishing defenses in a row, Georgia and Oklahoma. So those are physical defenses. So I know that means maybe their offense could be a little bit beat up, I guess, coming into this game. But I still think the fatigue is still going to kind of set in on the defense for both teams. And I think for Ole Miss, after a big upset win at Oklahoma, coming off two big games like that, they could maybe be in for maybe we'll just ease our foot off the gas a little bit and maybe not totally focus on the South Carolina team. It's just not that good. As far as the side, Ole Miss is the public side. They're down from 13 to 12.5. 77% of tickets, only 68% of the cash on Ole Miss. It does look too easy to lay the points with Ole Miss, which the public is going to do that because it's a Lane Kiffin offense. It just goes crazy. So the public is only going to lay the points, and they obviously don't want anything to do with a bad South Carolina offense. But, and this is still going to be a 2-hour show, so isn't that just fucking great? Thought we were going to maybe get an hour and a half one in there for once. But I can't take the points with South Carolina off of that game last week against Alabama. I think South Carolina is probably in the worst spot out of the two teams because that was such a close call where they almost had a monumental win against Alabama. So I would actually probably lay the points with Ole Miss if I was going to play the side in this game, but I'm not. I'm going to go with the total, and yeah, I know it's up a little bit from 54-ish to 55.5. The money seems to be agreeing with this and coming in on the over, even though the public probably is going to be playing overs in Mississippi games as well because they like their offense. 81% of tickets, 83% of the cash coming in on it. So the money seems to be agreeing with it. We'll see how I do with a total, which I almost never give out totals in anything besides baseball. I don't know if I'm going to start doing it more if my ability to read totals has improved. I know I've done this for almost 2 decades now, and I have just never really been a totals guy. It just has never really been part of my arsenal. Let's expand the arsenal, man. Let's do it. And not the British soccer team. That's going to do it, man. Once again, the plays for tomorrow for college football are Florida +7, Arkansas -4.5, and over 55.5 in South Carolina and Ole Miss, all SEC tomorrow. That's going to do it. Hopefully you like the analysis. Mr. Pinsey, thanks for hanging out and being the only one tonight. That's going to do it. I'll Learn to Toad on Twitter, Learn to Toad on Instagram. Subscribe to the channel here. Tell people about it. Hopefully we get back on the winning track here. Listen on audio as well. Spotify, Apple, give me a good review over there. That helps me out as well. Covered in Uke is my Uke channel on YouTube, so check that out as well. And patreon.com/LearnToToad, where there's some Uke stuff. I know I don't offer a whole lot right now. I should do more, but there's a Spotify feed with the Uke stuff there, and then which I still have to get that last Halloween one that I did up on the Spotify feed, which I haven't done yet. The Misfits one that I did for Charles. I don't know where Charles is tonight either, but hopefully people will be back in the morning for this. And yeah, there were prioritized Uke requests on there as well. And at some point I'm going to be announcing, because I am going to be doing another sports podcast with a co-host. It's going to be kind of niche. So I don't know if I want to say too much about it yet, but that is going to be starting soon. So we will see. So I'm going to be doing a lot. So we'll see how it goes, man. I appreciate it, man. Mr. Pinsey, thanks for hanging out. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, of course, we'll be doing the morning show. It should be a bit of a shorter show. Although we will have to talk World Series again. I'll talk about what happened today with my losses and the one win, which was the World Series play that I gave out spur of the moment after I forgot to handicap it this morning. And then there'll be I think a decent amount of hockey. I think hockey. Usually there's a lot of hockey on Saturday, I'm pretty sure. And NBA, I think, is a little bit lighter. So we'll see. But I'll be there tomorrow to talk about those. That's going to do it for now. And then tomorrow night, NFL show as well, which I don't love the NFL board either. I only have one play, which you guys already know is Carolina plus the points. But I'll give the analysis on that, and we'll see if I find any more things that I like on the NFL board. That's going to do it for now. Peace, man. Until a few hours from now. Peace.